Good morning and welcome to Morning Movie News, where yesterday Hollywood had some impressively on-the-nose business deals made, both in terms of casting and putting a director on a certain project. I mean, often we feel that Hollywood misses the mark, that it would be so easy to match the right talent with the right property. So it's so refreshing to have not just one example of them doing it correctly, but three. Alright, so let's start off with what I'm the most excited about out of these headlines, and that's that Woody Harrelson has landed what's being said is the lead role, or a major human role, in the third Planet of the Apes movie opposite Andy Serkis' Caesar. And I'm really happy about this because I think Woody Harrelson has proven time and time and again recently that he is a real asset to movies. I mean, this guy just consistently delivers. For instance, in True Detective, I think that he really was a strong component to the success of that first season, but Matthew McConaughey got the lion's share of the attention. I mean, he had the showier role and the showier performance, but I don't think McConaughey would have worked what he did would have worked if it hadn't been grounded by Harrelson's performance. Then he was in Now You See Me. He did a spectacular job in that film and will return for the sequel. And then also, I think it's important not to overlook his contributions to the Hunger Games. There are so many of these dystopian young adult movies now, and they all try to get big-name adult actors attached, but I think no other franchise is able to utilize their adult talent quite like the Hunger Games does. And Woody Harrelson, I think, really has made the character of Haymitch his own. So this is someone, he had a little bit of a problem with his career, after leaving Cheers. I think a lot of the movies that he made were really out of left field. He's always had his fans, and I think you can always admire him as an artist, certainly, but never somebody who's been, I think, someone that the mainstream audience pays special attention to. But perhaps that will change if he continues on the path that he's currently on. So I think that I think that the first Planet of the Apes film had, of the new trilogy, or the new run of it, I guess. Who knows how many they're going to make. But, I thought that James Franco and Frida Pinto did a really nice job. John Lithgow was in there. David Oyelowo, early on in his career, was also in the film, and it was a good human cast. But then I think that for the sequel, I thought that Jason Clarke and Kerry Russell were very weak human counterparts. And, Gary Oldman was there, but he didn't have a lot to do, and it's a pretty cliche Gary Oldman role. And we all know that Gary Oldman isn't above a paycheck gig. And I think that the Planet of the Apes movies are sophisticated enough that they should never seem like paycheck gigs. So I think that you had a pretty well-balanced cast the first time around between human and ape. I think in the second film, the apes certainly overshadowed what the humans were doing. And so I hope there's a chance to not only return to an even balance, but maybe actually even finally have Andy Serkis act opposite someone who's playing a human that can really go, toe-to-toe with him in terms of the performances they deliver. I don't think Andy Serkis has had that yet as Caesar, and I think that Woody Harrelson could definitely deliver that. So I'm very excited, and I think that's a fantastic choice. Also, speaking of Hunger Games, I think that's, of course, that franchise is now over, and I think it's very smart for another franchise, here, Apes, to pick up Harrelson, because now he's more available. And I think that, I hope that he gets more, big ticket work. So that's the first story of the day, and I'm curious to what you think. Are you as excited as I am, not just to see Harrelson join the Apes franchise, but just to continue to get more high-profile roles? Or do you think he's totally, I'm making too much of it and he's not that great an actor? All right, so that's the first on-the-nose business deal of the day. The second is that Dreamworks is really trying to pull their Trolls movie together for holiday season 2016. Dreamworks Animation had some trouble. They've been releasing 3 movies a year. Didn't really work out for them. They've really had to do some major restructuring, not just with their release schedule, but also when it comes to their creative talent. You've seen a lot of executives shuffling around, and also their slate. Boo, Bureau of Otherworldly Operations, has been pushed back. I don't think it has a set release date at this point, and that was something that was supposed to come out fairly soon. Also, as we all know, DreamWorks tried to sell, and go private again, but no one would purchase them, and when Hasbro flirted with the idea, Disney threatened to take all their licenses from Hasbro. So, interesting situation indeed. But anyway, I think this Trolls picture finally looks like it's coming together. I don't know. I think Trolls were really popular first in the 60s, and then they had a comeback in the 90s. I've never understood the popularity of Trolls at any time period. I feel like I think they're like these crazy little dolls who are like basically these like weird nudists. But maybe DreamWorks can get people into them again. I don't quite see it, but I think with this voice cast, they're headed more in the right direction. Now, Anna Kendrick has been attached for quite some time to play a troll princess, and I think she's a pretty good choice, and of course, she has a very strong fan base when it comes to her musical work. But now that she's been teamed up with Justin Timberlake, which was the big announcement yesterday, I think this picture now suddenly has a real fighting chance, particularly if they can have a killer soundtrack. I think that both Justin Timberlake and Anna Kendrick are not only fantastic singers, but they've both proven to be extremely game, which I think you would need to be in a Trolls animated movie. Also, though, they're saying that they're trying to make this the new Shrek, which I can see, and Timberlake is a callback to the Shrek franchise because he voiced a character in Shrek 3. Shrek 2 is still my favorite of the movies, but they've, of course, all made tons of money. That's the franchise that built DreamWorks, just as Toy Story is the franchise that built Pixar. So very interesting indeed. And I'm curious, are you on board with this Trolls movie? Were you to begin with? And if not, what sold you? Was it Anna Kendrick being included a while back, or now is it the tipping point Justin Timberlake? Or do you still need convincing? So that's the second story of the day. Now, the third story of the day, a lot of people, there was actually a fourth with Liam Neeson, but I only have room for 3 stories because I want to make sure I get a viewer question in there. I appreciate you guys asking them. So I'll do the Liam Neeson one tomorrow. But anyway, Elizabeth Banks is in talks to direct a new Charlie's Angels movie, which I hope is a little bit better than I think the very self-serving one that Drew Barrymore produced with Cameron Diaz and Lucy Liu, I'd say maybe about a decade or so ago. I thought that was very, when I say self-serving, I thought that it really meant to serve Drew Barrymore and be a star vehicle for her and her co-stars rather than the brand. I don't think they really worked very hard to create something that, would to reinvigorate the name Charlie's Angels. I think Elizabeth Banks is an interesting choice. I don't know which direction she would go in, if she would try and do a really great action movie, or if she would just do like Pitch Perfect with some kicks, right? I think that could make money, but I'd be curious to see what she chooses. I think Elizabeth Banks, I thought that when I reviewed Pitch Perfect 2, I talked about how good I think she did as a director on that film, so I think this is something that I would definitely entertain, and I think it's an impressive match again with the talent and the material. So we'll see if she takes it on. Now, this is what I want to expand on this story a little bit because I'm very impressed with Elizabeth Banks from a business standpoint. Now, she produces with her husband, who would also produce Charlie's Angels if this deal goes through, and they do a lot of work together. She's very prolific. She's able to do a lot of different projects as an actress, and then a lot of the times she's behind the camera on those too. Not so much as a director, that's a new thing for her, but certainly as a producer. And I think because she takes small roles in a lot of things, that's one of the things that helps her be so prolific. She's often supporting. But for instance, I think if you're a comic book reader, you've probably seen this too, but in DC Comics, I'd say for the past week or so, they've been consistently running an ad on the back of the front cover for an animated show called Moonbeam City. That's what I want to make sure I get it right. Yes, Moonbeam City, which basically looks like Comedy Central's answer to Archer, and they're like, but this one takes place in the 80s, so it's totally different. And I'm like, I think you're ripping off Archer. But anyway, FX must be so annoyed. But anyway, Elizabeth Banks is a voice on that show, and so that just shows, again, I think she's really tuned into what's going on in the entertainment business, and I think she's very savvy at finding opportunities and creating opportunities. Just yesterday we talked about who has the power in Hollywood, and I think, again, I said the answer was who makes the most money, but also I think it's really important to have a strong business sense, and I think Elizabeth Banks and her husband are an excellent example of someone who has a great business sense and is therefore able to flourish from an artistic standpoint. All right, so those are the 3 stories of the day. I'm curious if you think all those deals are as spot on as I do. And now I want to get to the viewer question, which I thought was really interesting. This is from BTT regular Irian42. I like that they have avatars for everybody now. I get to know you guys a lot better. But Irian42 has a question about China. And Irian says, Grace, question regarding China. Do you think the importance of China is overhyped? He's talking about the box office. What I mean is this, considering that the fraud case you talked about recently and the fact that studios get a smaller share of the Chinese box office in general, I read in the Hollywood trades it's like 25% max, while in the US it's about 2/3. It really shakes out to about 50% here. Do we give the Chinese market too much importance? I mean, if 100 million for Terminator in China is only the same as 38 million in the US, meaning that's how much the studio takes home, that seems to me a little less impressive than what entertainment journalists often proclaim. Really interesting question, Arian42. And yes, the take home from China is not quite as big as I'm sure Hollywood would like it to be. But I think that, as we also often discuss here on Morning Movie News and Beyond the Trailer in general, a big part of success in Hollywood is perception, right? Are you perceived to be a success? And so while the take-home is, limited, it's only a fraction of what's actually brought in. The studios get to count the whole amount in the totals when it comes to the record books. And then that allows them to have some pretty great headlines. And that's very important to inspire further sales, be it ticket sales, DVD sales, Blu-ray sales, more streaming, etc. down the line. For instance, if Terminator Genisys, when it does well in China, they're able to have Terminator Genisys does well in China, plastered across all the industry trades, and suddenly Terminator doesn't seem like such a failure anymore. They may not be getting all the money that Minions is putting out there, but it still has allowed Minions to be able to claim the title of the second highest grossing animated movie of all time, which is huge, and so that's really important. Also, it's great to have your movie in the $1 billion club, and China is propelling a lot of movies into that territory these days. Then also look at Mission Impossible: Rogue Nation. That took in $86 million, as I reported on Movie Math on Monday. $30 million more than it opened with in the United States. That's a fantastic headline, not just for the franchise, but also Tom Cruise. It makes him seem much more relevant, and that he has another part of the world where he can deliver. So that's going to lead to not only more Mission Impossible movies, but it's going to lead to more work for Tom Cruise. And I think he's looking less and less like a liability as he was after the couch jumping incident. I mean, he had to work really hard to get his career back on track, but I think he's finally done it. For instance, Jack Reacher 2 is coming up. He's making another movie, Mina, which had some very tragic news over the weekend about a helicopter crash which killed 2 crew members, actually, production members. But still, I've been wanting to discuss that. It's really tragic. There were a couple of deaths in Hollywood, actually, last week. I'll try to cover it tomorrow. But that's what it is. The Chinese box office is important in terms of perception, and that those totals, I mean, no one's going to scoff at an extra $38 million, right? Even if it's only a fraction of what the movie brought in, as you said with Terminator. But I think that it's the combined extra revenue, whatever they're getting. And also, I have to tell you that China's been slow to pay out with the fraction that the U.S. is owed. But still, again, it's the record books, the number one movie of the year, of all time, where does it stand? I mean, that's very, very important. Furious 7 would not be the huge, box office earner that it is if it wasn't for China, and that's all very important. All right, so that's my answer to your question, Arian42. Thank you so much for asking it. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. Today's a little bit of an abbreviated episode. I apologize about that, but I have so much coverage to get to today. But please write down below what you think of today's top 3 stories and that viewer question. Anything you'd like to see covered tomorrow, and any questions that you might have. Thanks for watching. Bye.